Hi everyone, it's Sophia, the Debt Demolisher, and welcome to the Sophia Melonē Show, where we make debt freedom the new norm and wealth building the natural nature of habit. This week on the Sophia Melonē Show, we are going to touch on the importance of planning your numbers. In other words, planning your money. I have to tell you guys, there are so many instances when I'm speaking to clients or potential clients during consultation sessions or doing one-on-one strategy sessions or coaching with me. And the number one thing that I always hear on a consistent basis is that people struggle with either paying bills on time or they struggle with not having enough money to pay the bills once they're due, or they just don't know how to budget. And I have to tell you guys, everything that ties into on-time payments, not having enough money, and budgeting stems back to budgeting. It goes back to planning. There's so many times where people say, look, I don't know how to budget. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't like the word budget. I cringe when I hear the word budget. If you don't like the word budget, just change the language and just say, okay, I'm creating a plan for my money. So I thought that it will be really important to do an episode this week specifically on planning your numbers and, more importantly, how to do it. So this is going to be a bonus thing for you guys, because I'm going to pull up the screen where you can see an amazing outline that you guys can start to utilize, or we can use for demonstration purposes, on how you can start planning out your money. Okay, so before we get started, let me just share with you guys. Do not be afraid to do this. And I encourage you right now, before we start, to go ahead and just get a piece of paper out and start taking notes. Remember, I told you guys way back from the introductory video of the Sophia Melonē Show that you are here to learn and, more importantly, to take action. So it's time to get started. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my personalized template, which is called My Budget Outline, and it will be yours because I'm going to provide a link at the bottom so you guys can download it, access it, and utilize it for your personal use. But I really want us to get started in this thing so we can get rolling on getting you on the fast track to planning your numbers. Let's get started. Okay, guys, so I am now share screening with you all my budget outline. So I personally developed this outline for one of my clients who I was working with, and we were just trying to basically create a simplified version of what she can do to outline and plan her money on a paycheck to paycheck basis, right? So in this outline, I just have it broken into simple sections: income and then expenses. So what the purpose of this outline is for you to basically plan your numbers as you are paid, but essentially you do want to do it in advance so you're able to map out and actually cover the entire month if feasibly possible. So since we're in the beginning of March, I'm going to go ahead and utilize March as the due dates and all of that stuff for your expenses for the month. So let's say, for instance, if you got paid on Friday was March the 2nd, 2018. So what you would do is you would just simply go ahead and highlight or input the paycheck date. So in this case, we have March the 2nd, 2018 as the paycheck date. Next, what you want to do is, okay, now you want to outline your deposit. So let's say, for instance, I got paid on the 2nd. So of course, the due date, or the deposit date rather, for that check was March the 2nd. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Let's say, for instance, if you have your paychecks going to multiple allotments. So you may have your main account that you send most of your paycheck to, and you may send your money to different sub-accounts depending on what the dollar amount is. So in this case, I'm just going to use 2 banks as an example, just to show you how you can split up your money based on how many allotments you have. So let's say, for instance, you typically have $300 that's sent to your credit union account. And then let's say Bank of America is your main account. So you have the difference sent there. So if you get paid, if your net paycheck is $1,500 a month, 300 goes to credit union, and we'll say 1,200 will go to your Bank of America. This section down here is for others. So like, let's say for instance, if you have some additional supplemental income, which is something that I always encourage folks to do, to make sure that you are gaining additional income outside of your full-time 9-to-5 career, right? So there are, let's say, I'll just have this as a notation for part-time gig. If you have a business is maybe your business compensation that you get. Let's just say that you're paid out on that the first of the month. If you are paid, let's say for this one, since it's kind of part-time pay, it's not as much as your full-time pay, you just have this going into one account. So we'll say, okay, this is going into the credit union account 150. So we've broken out all of our income that we received in this particular period so far. Remember, this is the beginning of the month. So we want to go ahead and tally that up. So I'm going to go ahead and tally this up. That's 450. And then I want to tally this up to 1,200. Simply add it down. Now, this is where we get into the meat and potatoes when it gets to your expenses. So, let me do something 1 second. Okay, so now we want to get to the meat and potatoes, as I was saying, when we get to your expenses. So ideally, one of the things that you want to make sure that you do first is outline every single expense that you pay during the month. So regardless of what check is going to come out of, you really need to have pretty much a repository, an entire listing of what expenses you are responsible for paying for that particular month. So here I just pretty much have most of the things listed, ideally what folks would typically have in terms of expenses for the month. Now, it's not that you will pay every single thing out of this one check, because a lot of times that's not realistic, but I just want you to see what it would look like and why it's so important to make sure that you have 2 of these, because when you're planning out for the month, you want to make sure that you have enough outlines to cover each paycheck that you're going to receive for that month. So I'm just going to run through this really quickly so you can pretty much get a general understanding. First and foremost, my methodology and my principle that I live by is paying your tithes. I'm a firm believer in giving, paying your tithes. Ideally, you want to pay your tithes on the gross, but there are some people who may not be able to do that realistically or feasibly. So they may tithe off the net. And if you can't afford to tithe off the net, the idea is for you to give what you can, but make sure that you tithe. So for purposes of this example, we're going to go ahead and base it off of tithing off of the net, the 1650 rather, that your total income was here. So for tithing purposes, you could break it out and take 10% of this and 10% of this and put it here, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it in one so it can be easily reflected that you'll be paying your tithes out of one account, essentially. So I'll go ahead and put 165 as the tithe amount here. And then what you also want to do is make sure that you pay yourself. Like I always tell my clients that you have to pay yourself first. Here's my philosophy. I pay my tithes, I pay myself, and then I pay everyone else. So realistically, what you want to do is save 10% of your income. At least pay yourself 10%. If 10% is not feasible for you, do what is feasible for you. If it's 8%, do 8. If it's 5%, do 5. If it's 3%, do 3. So in this example, we're going to say that we're going to pay ourselves 10%. So, and I'll do the split so you guys can see. So 10% of the 450 total appears 45, and then 10% of the 1,200 up here is 120. So for the rent, so you'll see here for the due date, I have that this rent is due, or your mortgage is due on April the 1st. So since this pay date was March the 2nd, ideally your rent and your mortgage should have already been paid. So one of the things that I always stress with people who I work with is that you have to make sure that you're planning your money accordingly so you can pay your bills by the due date, not after, by, on or before the due date. So since the second has already passed, I'm not going to put in this scenario that you're just going to be trying to pay your rent out of this payout. No. Or you're just trying to pay your mortgage out of this payout. No. What we're doing in this example is you're planning and you're allocating for the rent that's going to, in your mortgage that's going to be due in the subsequent month. So one thing that I think that, let's say for instance, if your rent or your mortgage is $1,400, because you've already paid your March rent, right? Now you're planning and paying out for April. So ideally what will be good for you to do is take half of what you owe. So let's say your rent was $1,400 or your mortgage was $1,400. You automatically set aside and say, okay, $700 is being set aside for my rent or my mortgage that is due on April the 1st. For my homeowners and my mortgage, and my folks with mortgages, I will say this. One of the things that you can try to take advantage of is see if your lender allows bi-weekly payments, because I know sometimes it can be a struggle just trying to keep and reserve $700 sitting in your account until the next time you're paid. One trick is to get that money out the door and out of your account. You can see if your bank will allow you to do bi-weekly payments. If you do bi-weekly payments, number one, you're going to be making an additional mortgage payment for that entire year, which of course drives down the amount that you owe overall. So that's just a trick. If you guys feel like, okay, I'm not going to be able to keep $700 and not touch it. For my mortgage folks, see if you can go ahead and set up a bi-weekly payment arrangement. For my folks who rent, see if you can move that money into an offshore account or a separate account that is specifically for your rent and you pay it out of that. That will be the best option that I think that you guys can do in that case. Okay, so for the water, let's say your water is $40. Okay, so let me go back. Before I go down this line, I want to share with you that what you want to do is focus on identifying the items that are due on or before your next paycheck. So if in this scenario, if we are paid the 2nd, and we're paid bi-weekly, that means our next check would be on the 16th within the next 2 weeks. So what you want to do is make sure that you have a dollar amount in every single line item that has a due date that is on or before March the 16th. So far we've covered everything. And remember I said the mortgage, regardless, even if that says 4-1, you want to make sure that you're properly allocating and you're setting aside money for that, so you won't be trying to take it out at the last minute or you won't end up short. Okay, so heat, we can skip heat because essentially that due date is at the ending of the month and we can worry about that in our next check. Electricity, that's before then. So let's say your electricity may be $100. I'm just throwing some numbers in there. Alarm system, we can skip that because it's due on the 20th. Let's say groceries, we have that flexible because you can do grocery shopping at any time. But let's say if it's the beginning of the month, you need to go grocery shopping. Let's go ahead and put a dollar amount there. So let's say, I'm not sure, let's do $200 for groceries. Transportation, you need to be able to get around. If you drive a car, you have gas, you take public transportation, you have to be able to get around so you can get to and from your place of employment or do your work or whatever it is that you do. Let's say $160, estimate for that. This one, behind the due date. So I'm only focusing on things that are on or that are due on or before March the 16th. So here we go. We have a credit union credit card. So let's say, for instance, your credit union credit card, of course, it would make sense for you to pay it out of your credit union account. So let's say you want to make a $200 payment on that. You have a car loan with the same credit union. You have a $200 car note. So you put that there. Everything else is flexible, so we can kind of leave these open for now. Again, this is just for you to be able to put in any additional expenses that may not have been covered. So if you have subscriptions or something that comes out on a recurring basis, you can go ahead and put that in there. So we'll do subscription so you can see that. And then whatever the due date is, I'll just say 320. So we won't have to worry about adding that. Okay, so now we've populated all of the expenses that are due on or before the next time we are paid, which is the 16th. And now what we want to do is go ahead and tally it up to see where we are expense-wise. So for the expenses so far, we are at $445 on this side. And then on this side, let's see, 160, 120, 700 for, okay, so I can already tell that we're over. So 1,385 is where we are. So once you tally up your numbers, now you want to go ahead and calculate that. Okay, where am I? Am I above? Am I in the green or am I in the red? Okay, you guys, we want to stay out of the red. So for the credit union account, we actually have a surplus of $5, which is good. And for the Bank of America account, we are actually in the hole $185. So having this outline allows you to see, okay, I have to adjust some things because right now what I'm bringing in is not enough to cover the expenses that is going to come out of this account. So let's go back and look to see what we can revisit. Okay, so some of the items that we can revisit is groceries. You know, maybe you may not need to spend $200 on groceries. Maybe you need to see if there's ways where you can start couponing and saving and cutting back and finding ways where you can do more with less. So let's go ahead and cut this grocery budget down to 75. And then again, remember, this is a 2-week time span. So maybe you can say, okay, well, maybe I can only spend $75 and see if this can tie me over until the next time I'm paid. Then you can do the same thing for transportation. Let's take this down to $50. So even still, if we take this down to $50, we are still short because that takes us to 1,250, which means we are short $50. So this is the name of the game, and this is where you can kind of go around and see what can I adjust. So you know, if your electricity bill is something that you need in order to keep your house running, you can't adjust that. You know, your water bill is something that you need, so you can't adjust that. You know, your mortgage is something that you cannot adjust, so you need to keep that the same. The only thing that you can consider adjusting are areas which are flexible, which is your groceries and your transportation. And if need be, you can go ahead and adjust these 2 columns. So remember I said, if you don't have enough to do 10%, do what you can. So if we're $50 short, and let's say, okay, I can't do that, I'll just do 5%, right? So that's $60. So if we change this to 60, where you pay yourself $60 to put that in, then you're now out of the hole and you have enough to cover what you need. Okay, so this is just a prime example. What I wanted to show you guys, how you just have to write it down and put it on paper. And I'm going to share a link with you guys so you can have access to this outline. I'm giving this to you guys as a freebie. If you would like to download it and utilize it, let me go back and stop sharing my screen so you guys can see me. But I want to share with you guys like how important it is to plan your money. Just take the time, sit down, write out your expenses, write out your income, see where you're behind, see what you can adjust. And if you're in a position where you can't adjust, then you need to focus on adjusting the income side. What can I do to make more money to get me out of the hole? What can I do to make more money so I can ensure that I'm able to pay myself? What can I do to make more money? You know, you have to really sit down and think about these things, because a lot of times we try to do it up here. And you can't always do that. You can't always do it up here. You have to be able to write it down, see it on paper, put it in a spreadsheet, put it in an outline, calculate it so you can see what you are working with in terms of your numbers. I'm telling you guys, you will not be disappointed by doing this process. So I just want to tell you guys, if this has helped you in any way, form or fashion, make sure that you share this with someone, because there's so many people out here who don't know how to plan their numbers. And if you were able to successfully do this, then you should be able to invite a friend. So share this with someone, invite them into this platform with you, and make sure that you go to sophiamelonē.com and download the freebie. I'm going to give you guys this budget outline tool, and I really hope that you take the time to just sit down, do it, and map it out for a month. Do it at a month at a time. Print out as many copies as you need, and you can adjust it. It's going to be blank, so you can write in and fill in what it is that you need in terms of your particular expenses on a month-to-month basis. Pay as you go, check to check. Because remember, we're trying to work our way out from living check to check. But like I always tell my clients, you can't know where to start. You can't know how to start if you don't know where to start. And in order to know how to start, you have to sit down and you have to start writing out the numbers. You have to start writing out the numbers. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode of the Sophia Melonē Show, where I just showed you guys how to plan your numbers. Make sure that you tune in next week so you can see what we're going to be serving you on this platform. I absolutely love working with you guys. I'm hoping that you're finding this as useful as I wish I would have had years ago, because this is why I do what I do, so I can absolutely serve my community. So until next week, go to the link in the description box and download your budget outline. All right? Have a great week.